What is the sound of absolute silence? Not the quiet of a library or the hush of snowfall, but the silence where no air carries vibration, where your heartbeat becomes the loudest thing in existence. In deep space, that silence is eternal. And within it, something rather extraordinary happens to the human animal. We begin to come undone, not dramatically, not all at once, but cell by cell, bone by bone, as if the universe itself is gently, patiently erasing us. Today, I want to share why this erasure is not a failure of engineering, but a revelation about what we truly are. You see, I've spent my life watching life adapt to impossible places. I've seen microbes thriving in boiling volcanic vents, organisms suspended in Antarctic ice for millennia, seeds that lie dormant for centuries waiting for rain. Life is stubborn. Life is creative. Life finds a way, as the saying goes. But there's something we don't often discuss, something uncomfortable that challenges our grandest ambitions. Humans are the exception. We are perhaps the only species on Earth that dreams so fervently of escaping the only home we'll ever be suited for. And I think that matters to you, even if you never planned to leave Earth's atmosphere, because we've been sold a story, haven't we? A story about human destiny among the stars, about becoming a multiplanetary species, about the inevitability of space colonization. It's a seductive narrative. It appears in our films, our books, our billionaire manifestos. It whispers that Earth is merely a cradle we must eventually leave, that staying here is somehow small, limited, unambitious. But what if I told you that this narrative, however inspiring, is actually obscuring something far more profound? What if our inability to survive deep space isn't revealing our limitations, but rather our belonging? What if every barrier the universe places between us and the stars is simultaneously a love letter from Earth, reminding us of an intimacy so complete we've stopped noticing it? That's what I want to explore with you today. Not to crush dreams or dismiss the remarkable achievements of space exploration, but to offer you something I believe is more valuable than false hope, honest reckoning, and perhaps, if we're fortunate, a renewed sense of wonder for the only world that will ever truly hold us. Let me start with a creature I've always found fascinating, the tardigrade, sometimes called a water bear. These microscopic animals are extraordinary. They can survive the vacuum of space, extreme radiation, temperatures near absolute zero, and pressures that would crush most life forms. Scientists have sent them into orbit, exposed them to the void, and brought them back. And they survived. But here's what's important to understand. They didn't really survive in the way we think about survival. They entered a state called cryptobiosis, essentially. They died. Or rather, they surrendered everything we'd recognize as life. Their metabolism stopped completely. They expelled all water from their bodies, becoming desiccated husks. Their DNA became suspended in a protective glass-like state. They existed, yes, but without consciousness, without growth, without relationship to their environment. This is what space permits, not life, but suspension. The tardigrade teaches us that surviving the void requires surrendering nearly everything that makes survival meaningful. Now imagine a human astronaut floating in deep space. She cannot enter cryptobiosis. Her consciousness remains active indeed, hyperactive, flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. Her body cannot shut down its metabolism. It must continue burning energy, demanding food, water, oxygen. Her mind cannot suspend itself. It continues generating thought, emotion, memory, the constant hum of human awareness. The tardigrade survives space by essentially not being alive. Humans must remain alive, and that's precisely what makes space so devastatingly hostile to us. We cannot turn ourselves off. We cannot pause our humanity and resume it later. We are committed to the continuous act of being alive, and that act requires a very specific stage, a stage that took 4 billion years to construct. You see, we often misunderstand what we are. We think of ourselves as individuals, as discrete beings with boundaries and autonomy. But this is an illusion. You are not actually an individual. You are an ecosystem. Right now, as you listen to these words, your body contains roughly 37 trillion human cells. But it also contains somewhere between 38 and 100 trillion bacterial cells. These bacteria aren't invaders, they're intimate partners. They live in your gut, on your skin, in your mouth, performing tasks your human cells cannot do. And this ecosystem exists only because of ongoing relationships with forces much larger than yourself. Gravity, for instance. Right now, gravity is pulling blood down toward your feet. Your heart compensates by pumping harder, maintaining pressure in your brain. Your bones bear constant compression, which signals them to maintain density and strength. Your inner ear detects gravitational pull, allowing you to balance. Remove gravity, and these relationships sever. In space, blood redistributes upward, pooling in your head and chest. Your face becomes permanently puffy. Your sinuses fill with fluid that has nowhere to drain. But more seriously, your heart, no longer needing to pump against gravitational resistance, begins to atrophy. It literally shrinks. When astronauts return to gravity, their cardiovascular systems struggle to do what was once automatic. Your bones, too, respond to the absence of relationship. On Earth, every step you take creates compression that travels up your skeleton. This compression is actually a signal. It tells your bones they're needed, that they must remain strong. In space, that signal disappears. Your bones receive the message that they're no longer necessary. And so, with brutal efficiency, your body begins recycling bone tissue. You lose 1 to 2% of bone mass per month. Astronauts on the International Space Station train for 2 hours daily using specialized equipment designed to simulate resistance. And still, despite all this effort, they continue losing bone mass. Imagine spending a decade in deep space. Imagine the day you finally arrive at your destination, stepping out onto another world. You take that first step, and your femur snaps, your hip fractures. All those years of travel, and you cannot even walk. But bone loss is only part of the story. Your gut microbiome changes dramatically in space. Studies show that the diversity of gut bacteria decreases. Certain beneficial species die off entirely. Your circadian rhythm, your internal sense of time, depends on a 24-hour cycle of light and darkness. In space, orbiting Earth every 90 minutes, astronauts experience 16 sunrises and sunsets per day. Their circadian systems become completely confused. Sleep quality plummets, cognitive function declines. And then there's radiation. On Earth, you're protected by 2 extraordinary shields. The first is our atmosphere, 100 kilometers of gases that absorbs most harmful radiation. The second is Earth's magnetic field, generated by molten iron spinning beneath your feet. This magnetic field deflects charged particles from the solar wind and cosmic rays. In deep space, both shields disappear. You're exposed to galactic cosmic rays, high-energy particles traveling at nearly the speed of light. On Earth, you're exposed to about 3 millisieverts of background radiation per year. On the International Space Station, astronauts receive about 150 millisieverts per year. In deep space, radiation exposure skyrockets. On a multi-year mission to Mars, astronauts could receive exposure far exceeding NASA's career limits. But here's what's even more troubling. Radiation damage is cumulative and irreversible. Each particle that strikes your cells has a chance of breaking DNA strands, mutating genes. Your cells have repair mechanisms, but they're designed for Earth's radiation levels. Think about what DNA actually is. It's molecular memory. Every strand contains 4 billion years of evolutionary adaptation. Radiation doesn't just damage cells, it corrupts memory. It introduces noise into the signal. And there's no real shielding that solves this. You'd need meters of lead or water to block cosmic rays effectively, which would make spacecraft impossibly heavy. Then there's the resource problem. On Earth, air, water, and food aren't resources we manage, they're gifts from a self-sustaining ecosystem. In space, every breath must be manufactured. The ISS recycles about 90% of its water. That sounds efficient until you realize what that 10% loss means over time. On a multi-year mission where resupply is impossible, that 10% compounds. Each month, you lose more. Eventually you run out. And when you run out of water in space, that's the end. But there's something even more subtle happening. Recycled water is pure H2O, stripped of dissolved minerals your body needs. It hydrates, technically, it keeps you alive, but it doesn't nourish in the way living water does. It's the difference between surviving and thriving, and I think there's a metaphor here for many of us on Earth. How many of us are living on recycled experiences, recycled relationships, recycled meaning? We sustain ourselves, but we're not truly nourished. Space isn't empty either. That's one of the most dangerous misconceptions. It's filled with debris, asteroids, comets, micrometeoroids, dust particles. A speck of dust, no larger than a grain of sand, traveling at 50,000 kilometers per hour, carries the kinetic energy of a bullet. One impact on the hull could mean catastrophic decompression. One hit on your water storage, and you've lost irreplaceable supply. And even without catastrophic impacts, normal system failures are inevitable. On Earth, when something breaks, you call for help. In space, there is no help. If life support fails, you have minutes before carbon dioxide becomes toxic. Every repair is life-threatening, and cascading failures can occur one system breaking overloads another, which damages a third. Then there's the psychological dimension, the isolation, the confinement, the knowledge that there is no escape. We've studied this through people confined in bunkers, Arctic stations, submarines. Even with careful selection and training, after months, problems emerge. Depression sets in, sleep disorders develop, cognitive function declines. And in those studies, there's always an escape hatch. In deep space, there is none. Humans need consequence. We need to feel that our actions matter to something beyond ourselves. In space, nothing responds, no weather shifts, no tree grows. You become cosmically irrelevant, and the human psyche cannot tolerate sustained irrelevance. Finally, there's time. The nearest star is 4.24 light-years away. With our fastest spacecraft, it would take over 6,000 years to get there. Even Mars is months away. A round trip would take 2 to 3 years minimum. And why? Resources? Asteroids are closer? Survival? Mars will never be a backup Earth. The honest answer is meaning. We want to explore because it gives us purpose. The impulse isn't wrong, it's deeply human. But perhaps the direction is, the most profound frontiers aren't distance, they're depth. Earth's oceans are less explored than Mars. The microbial networks beneath forests. The human brain, the most complex structure in the known universe. When we talk about leaving Earth, there's often an implicit suggestion that Earth is insufficient. But what if our obsession with leaving isn't vision, it's avoidance? We face profound challenges here. How tempting to imagine a fresh start elsewhere. But if we cannot learn to live sustainably on Earth, a planet with breathable air, liquid water, protective fields, what makes us think we'll do better on a frozen desert? So let me offer you a reframe. What if our inability to survive deep space isn't a limitation to overcome, but a truth to embrace? You are geographically specific. Your bones need this planet's gravity. Your cells need this magnetic field. Your lungs need this atmosphere. Every limitation space reveals is simultaneously a love letter from Earth. Tomorrow morning, stand barefoot on the ground. Feel your weight transferring through your skeleton. This pressure isn't burden, it's privilege. Gravity isn't weighing you down, it's holding you together. Now breathe. That breath is only possible because of atmospheric pressure. This atmosphere is shielding you from radiation that would kill you in hours. You are not a machine meant to conquer space. You are an Earth creature made of stardust. Yes, but also of soil, of tidal rhythms, of atmospheric pressure. Your homesickness for the stars is really homesickness for home, misplaced. You are not broken because you don't want to leave Earth. You're not limited because you need gravity and air. You are exquisitely adapted to this one pale blue sanctuary. Every challenge space reveals is simultaneously Earth whispering, you are already where you belong. You're not broken, you've just been misled into thinking home isn't enough. If this shifted something, if you felt even a moment of relief, leave a comment. Tell me one thing about Earth you're grateful for. And if you found companionship here, subscribe. Not because I need the numbers, but because you deserve reminders. You are home, you have always been home, and that is not a consolation prize, it is the whole glory. Thank you for listening.